Huh. I expected the Rocky Mountains to be a little rockier than this.
I was thinking the same thing. That John Denver's full of sh.
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. Today on the podcast, we are going to be talking about the Rocky Mountain Vibes, who play just down the street from me, well, a couple hours away from me in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Later on in this episode, I'll be speaking with Hudson Ridley, who is one of, if not the youngest broadcasters in all of professional baseball. And I'll be speaking, of course, with Jason Klein of the design firm Brandiose, who, of course, created the brand for the Rocky Mountain Vibes with Toasty the S'more. And I will be speaking with Baseball by Design's wildlife correspondent, Ranger Amy Burnett, not about any kind of wildlife, but about that Rocky Mountain vibe. Before we get started today, normally we would jump right into the interviews at this point in the podcast, but I did want to talk just a little bit about a story that I wrote back in 2019 for SportsLogos.net when this brand was unveiled. I had the opportunity to speak with Chris Phillips, who was the president and general manager of the team, who told one of my favorite and one of the most hair-raising stories about the launch of a team that I have heard. And I just wanted to share some of his words before we got into the other interviews. In short, what had happened with this team was the AAA Colorado Springs Sky Sox were moving away to become the San Antonio Missions before the 2019 season. The short season Single A Helena Brewers, that's a classification that doesn't even exist anymore, were moving from Colorado down to Montana to play in the same field where the Sky Sox had played and to take up the mantle of professional baseball in Colorado Springs with a short season Single A team. They went through a whole name the team contest. They knew that they wanted to do something that was less conservative than Sky Sox. They wanted to embrace the real minor league fun. They really wanted to shake things up. And so Chris Phillips says, as he's looking at the names that are coming in the name the team contest, quoting Chris in the article here, I'm scouring these lists every day and looking for the lightning bolt idea, and it was just not coming. There were about 3,000 names, but a lot of like pioneers and mountaineers, just kind of boring. And so the team really, really wanted to change. They wanted to really shake things up. And through a name the team contest, which you'll hear about this later on in the episode, obviously that famously included Rocky Mountain Oysters. Whether that ever might see the light of day as a what might have been name, maybe we'll see that someday. Who knows? But through this name the team contest, the folks with the team and the guys with Brandiose really liked Colorado Springs Happy Campers. And they were working towards that. The Brandiose guys had developed a bunch of marks, and the team, was getting ready to do this launch. So one of the things that Chris Phillips said at the time about this brand, he said, the reason I liked it was I didn't want to be an animal. I knew I didn't want to be a mountain guy or something like that. Happy Campers to me was more of an attitude, like a state of mind, an emotion. That opens itself up to being able to tell all sorts of fun, cool stories. So they were working towards this. This story has become the stuff of minor league lore at this point. They were just weeks out from launching the brand. And Chris Phillips says, I get into work one day and there's an email from my owner and the subject line says, problem with Happy Campers. That email was from the then president of minor league baseball when it was a separate organization before the hostile takeover by Major League Baseball. Then President Pat O'Connor, who had been alerted to the presence of a marijuana dispensary called the Happy Camper Dispensary in a town just outside of Denver. Chris Phillips says they had seen that. Quick Google search pulled it up right away, and they just never really thought it was going to be a major issue. But minor league baseball wanted them to change course at the last second. The guys at Brandiose were already deep into the process of developing this brand. They were just weeks away from launching the season. They had made up a whole bunch of the marks. You'll hear Jason talk about this later on in this episode. They had to call an audible, and they had to come up with an entirely new brand. And the way Chris tells it, the team's front office was devastated. They just, they had no idea what they were going to do. He had not slept for a week, he said, when he was wandering, he said, aimlessly through a Target, muttering out loud to himself. You know how your brain works, he said. You're like, that was the only name that was going to work. That was the best name ever. And it obviously wasn't. And so in the course of all this, he, was turning it over in his head and he says, I'm like, what's another word for that kind of vibe or something? And I'm like, vibe. We had used the word vibe a million times, but never in the context of it being a name. And then he continues, I'm like, vibes is kind of a cool word. It's got an energy to it. It's very Colorado-y. It's relevant to the region. I'm like, good vibes. No, chill vibes. No. And then I'm like, Rocky Mountain vibes. So he races back to the office and he says, what if we're the Rocky Mountain vibes? And he says, and it was dead silence. Well, of course, the rest is history. We're going to talk about it on this episode. You're going to hear from, as I said, Hudson Ridley, who is the team's broadcaster now. And you're going to hear from Jason Klein with Brandios about how this all went down. But I wanted to share Chris Phillips' words from that article from 5 years ago, because, the way he told that story, it was really pretty remarkable what that team went through and what they pulled off and how successful this brand is now since then. So I hope you enjoy the episode. And right now, I am so pleased to be joined by the Rocky Mountain Vibes Director of Broadcast and Media Operations, Hudson Ridley. Hudson, how are you doing?
Not too bad. How about yourself?
I'm doing really very well. I am so psyched to be talking about this brand. Just a couple hours down the road from me in Colorado Springs. I'm in Fort Collins, Colorado. You all have, I think, one of the most fun brands in minor league baseball. I'm going to jump in with like the very most basic question there is. How come a team in Colorado Springs, Colorado is called the Rocky Mountain Vibes with a s'more-based, hair on fire, running marshmallow logo?
I think the best answer almost is kind of why not? I think when the Sky Sox, which used to be at this ballpark, which was a much more serious brand, former AAA for the Rockies and, Brewers affiliate, kind of more of a serious brand, a serious name. And the Vibes kind of fell down the ladder of, going to A-ball and then rookie ball. And a lot more of those teams, as you know, towards the bottom rungs, tend to be a lot less serious with their naming. And it was kind of at the perfect wave of, unserious names in minor league baseball. And so differentiating from the Colorado Springs Sky Sox was one thing, but then to take it from the Sky Sox, a very, serious name, one that you could almost not maybe hear in Major League Baseball, but, very AAA-ish name, and take that to a rookie ball name. I think the other kind of thing to make it a much more stark contrast. And then the mascot, that Chris Phillips, the former GM of the Vibes, who pieced that idea together of, the Vibes is it's a Colorado thing. It's a laid back kind of attitude that a lot of people have. So kind of combining the two, it was kind of out of left field, I think, but it's ended up being a good branding decision.
Well, people love the logo. Obviously, one of the sort of famous things about this team is that the name Rocky Mountain Vibes was actually not one of the finalists in the Name the Team contest. And I'm not doing this from memory. I have it in front of me here. The Name the Team contest had the Colorado Springs Happy Campers, the Colorado Springs Lamb Chops. I don't know what that one's about. The Colorado Springs Punchy Pikas, the Colorado Springs Throttle Jockeys, and of course, this is coming, the Rocky Mountain Oysters. So
Yes.
Rocky Mountain Oysters, of course, got a lot of attention. Let's just say it right out loud. It's bull testicles. That's what Rocky Mountain Oysters are. And to my knowledge, I've been to several Vibes games. I've never seen Rocky Mountain Oysters on the menu. Do they sell them there?
No, we do not. I think the Rockies have sold them before, but we still have not added them to the menu. I'm sure if we did go with that name, we'd have them because we do have s'mores here. But I think those are tough to source too. I think that'd even be hard to add as a menu item in general.
Well, I certainly wouldn't want to do it. But I remember during the unveil, it was like, that's the only team name that started with Rocky Mountain. And so when they did the unveil, they were like the Rocky Mountain, and everyone thought, oh God, they're going to do it. They're going to be the Rocky Mountain Oysters. And then they said Vibes. How did it come to be that the team ended up going with a name that was not actually one of the finalists?
Well, there are a couple deeper things than just the surface of, having a team called the Rocky Mountain Vibes. The Rocky Mountain Oysters was, not really well perceived, I believe, by the local government. I don't think they really loved the idea of calling it the Rocky Mountain Oysters because of, the connotation behind that. I think that might have had a hand in it. I think a lot of it was also, the branding of the Rocky Mountain vibes could be so good. I think people eventually would say, okay, this is something that, we're a family ballpark. Family entertainment is kind of the thing that we've leaned on for the past maybe 4 or 5 years. So having something like that maybe isn't a little crass, and then making it up with branding, almost to have it be like a forget about what this could have been and look at what it is now kind of thing. That was almost, I believe, really the idea behind it.
So I feel like the word vibe now has a much bigger place in the sort of cultural landscape. Like I have daughters who are 17 and 20. They talk about things being a vibe, right? Like, so, you as a broadcaster now, you're the broadcaster for the team. How do you incorporate that? How do you incorporate the sort of brand, the, Toasty, the marshmallow, all that sort of thing? Do you incorporate that into the game broadcast?
Oh yeah, I think there's so many plays on words that can happen with vibes, and you mentioned the younger community too. They appreciate it. I'm 20. My broadcast partner is 19, and so we like to work in, not like to work in, but every once in a while it'll come up in a pun, or we hear it somewhere else, and instantly the light clicks because it's used so much in conversation. In circles that we're in, circles of younger people. So I keep the good vibes rolling when you end up on the broadcast, you ended, can they keep the good vibes rolling? They've scored 5 straight, something like that. Working that in is always funny. Or, it's a hot day outside. It's a little toasty at the ballpark. Oh, hey, there you go. Show the mascot on the field and all that. So I think, it's pretty, as a broadcaster, it's pretty easy to work something in. If you were like the Fort Wayne pin caps, I don't know how you work that in, but because it's so easy to mention the word vibe or the word toasty, it does make its way in a lot.
One of the things I like about the way that you've incorporated the brand into the ballpark is you've got places where people can make their own s'mores, and the brand itself has a lot of, obviously Toasty is a s'more, but there's also like a lot of, fires and campfire, the whole sort of camping thing that's going on there. How important has it been for the team to sort of embrace the whole notion of like camping and outdoorsiness in Colorado as part of the brand?
Oh, it's big, especially because, there's a big migration. As you know, you live in Colorado, there's a big migration to Colorado. And a lot of the people that move to Colorado, there's an ideal, and it's that kind of camping and lifestyle thing. So catering to that is important because people who come out from different places think that's what Colorado is. And so we're kind of trying to provide something where you get a good idea of what this community is, what the people around here like, and they feed onto that too. You mentioned, we have s'mores here at the ballpark. There's a fire pit area where people sit in chairs made out of skis and can roast marshmallows over the fire. So I think, it all ties into what the community would really want from us. And I think they've responded to that in a pretty good way, by showing that they want to come out, they want to sit by the campfire, they want to make s'mores, and kind of enjoy everything else that we have here tying into that brand. And they show that they love the merch too. I mean, as you know, and I'm sure we'll talk about, everybody, they come in, they don't just make the s'mores, they go over to the General S'more, which is where all the merch is stored, play on General Store. And those numbers do great as well. So yeah, I think the community has really embraced us on that fact.
Well, okay, so you mentioned the merch and you said we'll talk about it. Absolutely, we will. You're wearing the dad hat right now
Oh
with
yeah.
the Toasty, the sort of primary version of Toasty there. You mentioned there are several different versions of Toasty. I've got a t-shirt with Toasty tossing the ball in the air. That's my favorite version of Toasty right there. When you're at the ballpark, I know that there are some brands that are, like there's one that's a marshmallow with a bite out of it that forms the letter C for Colorado, and then there's a flame that that is in a letter S that makes, so the marshmallow and the flame together, form CS for Colorado Springs. There's a marshmallow with the Colorado C on it there, of course. When you're looking around the ballpark and you're doing the broadcast, is there a mark in particular that you see as the most popular? Are there, what's the version of this brand that you see the most when you're at the ballpark every day?
Well, this Toasty logo is far and away number one. I would say number two, that I see a lot of people like to wear. This kind of vibes script font in the fire writing over a stick that's supposed to be kind of like a marshmallow roasting stick. That is kind of like the 1B to the 1A of this toasty. My personal favorite, though, is neither of those. You mentioned the marshmallow with the bite out of it, and then the flame that makes the S. I think that is one of the most creative logos that I've ever seen. The combination of those is pretty cool. There are a couple that they've been put out, but you'd have to look for exactly where they are. And my favorite one of those, there's one of a cartoon toasty with a bottle of mustard in his hand, chasing after a hot dog. And that one is buried somewhere on the internet. You can find that. I'll send that to you. But
Yeah,
that one is one of my favorites.
I can honestly say I have not seen that one before. That sounds pretty hilarious. Well, Hudson, this obviously, I mean, this took the minor league baseball landscape by storm when it came out. I think it really does encapsulate Colorado. You said you were from Denver originally, and you grew up in that area down in Colorado Springs now. When you show this brand to friends who are from other places, because you went to school in Syracuse, yeah?
Yeah, I still go there right now. Yeah.
You are a student at Syracuse, which makes you one of the younger broadcasters in professional baseball, I would think.
I believe as of last year, because I started when I was 18 doing pro baseball. So I might have been the youngest. I don't know.
That's a pretty cool stat right there. So you're still in school, broadcasting for the Vibes during your summertime. Syracuse, obviously, a great school for journalism and broadcasting. So we know we'll be seeing a lot of you out there in the future. When you wear your Vibes stuff around Syracuse, who have a super boringly named Syracuse Mets AAA team there. I mean, come on. It's so boring.
That's fair. That is fair.
When you're wearing your Vibes stuff.
The orange, and I was a little taken aback.
No, not at all. No. I'm talking about the AAA team. No. The Syracuse Orange, that's great. Listen, I grew up rooting for Villanova basketball, and so there's a rivalry there, right? But no, I'm all about the Big East and the Syracuse Orange there. Is Syracuse the ACC now, though?
Yes, Syracuse ACC.
When I grew up, they were the Big East, but anyway, no, I'm talking about the Mets, the Syracuse Mets. That's boring. When you're wearing your Vibe stuff around Syracuse when you're at school there, what kind of reaction does it get?
Everybody has started to recognize it. I wear this hat a lot, and the people who know me now know the Vibes, and they know the Vibes enough to make jokes about the name Vibes and the plays on words, and they'll look at me. But no, I think it's not just me wearing this logo around, and people have asked me. They don't even know it's a minor league team because you can't really tell by the Toasty logo. They don't really know what it is, but they know that they like what they see. They know it's cool. But you see it in a lot of other places. I remember before I even got hired, there's a comedian, Bert Kreischer. I was watching some clip he had. He's a pretty famous comedian, and he had a hat on, and it had this flaming marshmallow on it. I took a look because I didn't know at the time. Said, what is this logo? And I checked it out. I was like, oh, there's this minor league baseball team down in Colorado Springs that has this logo. And that's my first introduction to the Vibes was through this logo. That's how, big it's become. Or, right now there's this big thing with NCAA 25 and you can build your own team. There have already been 15 or 20 plus teams that have been created on the Vibes branding alone because people love, it's not even baseball, but people just love branding and are attracted to the branding. So that was my introduction to it, was seeing somebody else with the hat. And I know, and when I'm at Syracuse, that's other people's introduction to the Vibes brand is, seeing the hat and going, what is that marshmallow, that flaming s'more?
That's awesome. Well, it's a great enough logo that I would love to see it on an ice cream helmet. Are the Vibes doing, I've been waiting for a while for the Vibes to be doing their own ice cream helmets. Do we have Vibes ice cream helmets yet?
I have seen a Vibes ice cream helmet before. I don't know if it's a day-to-day thing. I'll circle back around to you on this, but I have seen it before. And if it is the case, we need to keep it going because that is the best way to eat ice cream is out of a helmet.
100%. I've got a shelf with 503 ice cream helmets on it. The Vibes are not one of them yet. So yeah, I need to get one of those Vibes helmets for sure. Hudson, this has been a ton of fun. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule. I know it's a crazy time towards the end of the season here. And I appreciate you coming and chatting with me. Where can people find you? Where can people find the Vibes online?
Well, people can find me, Hudson_Ridley, really anywhere. But people can find the Vibes at Vibes Baseball on Twitter, Instagram, or X, whatever you want to call it. Instagram, YouTube, we post occasional highlights there. You can find a whole lot of stuff on our branding, and our Facebook is very up to date. Everything we post every day. So you can find us all online.
Awesome. Hudson Ridley, one of the youngest broadcasters in professional baseball. Thanks so much. Good luck next semester at Syracuse, and we'll see you at the ballpark.
Sounds good. You too. Take care, Paul.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I am so pleased to have Jason Klein from Brandy Ose on the podcast. Once again, Jason, I am psyched for this one. I have been wanting to talk to you about the work that Brandy Ose did on the Rocky Mountain Vibes logo for a long time. This is
so
right down the
fun.
road for me. I've been to a number of games here.
Yeah.
But the story behind this one is really fun. We'll get into that in a second here. But the centerpiece of this brand is an anthropomorphic s'more named Toasty.
One of my favorites. One of my favorites of all time.
Not one of your favorites. One of the minor league baseball's favorites. This one comes up
fun
all the time when I talk about, when I tell people I'm interested in minor league baseball, they're like, "What about this one here?" And so this is a fan favorite even outside the world of minor league baseball. This one people mention to me all the time. Who's Toasty? Where did Toasty come from?
Okay, so when we got there, the backstory was that the Colorado Springs Sky Sox was moving to Amarillo to become the Sod Poodles, and so they were gonna come up with like a new brand. That was sort of where we went with it. And we were like, the Sky Sox, we know what they've been able to accomplish, and it's fun, but like we could do something else. Like there could be something else we could do here, and what would that look like? And so Chris Phillips was the GM at the time, and he was taking us. We had it's like outdoors hiking, cycling, craft beer, like that whole genre, right? And we went, we went to the Air Force Academy, we went to Pikes Peak, we went to Garden of the Gods. Colorado Springs is a fascinating part of America. And it was like, okay, so like we knew it was going to be a celebration of outdoors and sort of the active lifestyle. That word kept coming up. Active lifestyle, always on the move, always going at it, camping, whatever. And so we had all these different names, and I remember the pikas was one of the concepts because it was like this furry, like a gerbil type thing that lived up in the mountains. The mountain goat, I think, was another concept. We were really into this idea of, ambassadors, mascots, if you will, that maybe hadn't been done before in sports. Yeah. And there was a lot in the area. And then it was like, the contender was the Happy Campers, right? I think they actually came. This is what it was. We had to name the team contest, and they came back and they're like, we got to name the Happy Campers. And we were like, right. And they were kind of worried because they were like, they kind of brought it in 11th hour. And we were like, oh man, that's what could we do with that? Right. And then I don't know who came up with the idea. It might've been Casey, but it was the idea of what if it was like, what do you do when you camp? Like, it's like s'mores. Like, what if the mascot was a s'more? And food identities were really starting to like pop at the time. So it was like, oh man, you could do like s'more things. And there was a conversation about what kind of universe we were going to create. If it's the Iron Pigs, it's like bacon and pulled pork nachos and sort of like, so how far can we extend s'mores? And I think what we realized was, no. Toasty was going to be this gateway into outdoor camping, sort of everything that you love about Colorado Springs. And it's an entryway into that world, not the whole world, if you will. And so, we knew we wanted to do navy blue. That was going to be the base color. You want to figure out how to. You start getting to marshmallow and graham cracker and chocolate, and like, how do you it's a lot of colors, and then you put in what sort of team colors, and is it going to sell? And so one of the things was how are we going to tell this story through color? That was like a huge conversation. So yeah, we had fire. So then there was this idea of could we not use red? Like nobody wanted to be red, white, and blue. So much red, white, and blue. So then it sort of, I don't know how the colors we landed on it, but this idea, I think it might actually be the same. I think it is the same ruby and red that Pensacola uses. And we were like, ooh, if we do that with yellow, we could kind of make it look like fire. And then you had tan for the graham crackers, and then underlit, and it worked. The chocolate was sort of hidden, so you didn't really need to have it be chocolate brown, the way that it worked. But the outdoor glasses, sort of like these hiking, sort of like like outdoor person glasses, like came to be a part of it. And then it was, one of my favorite logos is there's a CS logo where it's basically a bite out of a marshmallow to make the C, and then there's a flame S next to it for Colorado Springs, because they did want that nod, like, hey, I know we're becoming the Rocky Mountain vibes, but there was that. And then there was putting the flag C from Colorado into the, we basically built an entire font off of the Colorado flag.
We love our flag. We love our flag here in Colorado.
Man, that was it too. Like, I was like, man, you know what? Texans love their flag, but Colorado.
Yeah, no, we put it on everything.
Also, so you put that thing, you put that stuff on everything.
It is on everything.
So we were like, all right, we're gonna take the Colorado flag and turn it into a font, and that became the Rocky Mountain, and the font they use for all their pocket schedules and stuff. The roasting stick became a part of it. It was wood, graham crackers wood, so you get the tan. It was just it was super fun. It was super unexpected. And again, it brings in the Colorado flag, it's everywhere, right? It brings in the it brings in the food identity, it brings door the outdoor thing. But yeah, they were going to be the happy campers, and then we were all set. I don't know that we had lettering yet for it.
Okay.
But they came back and they're like, you can't be the happy campers. And
this was minor league baseball.
Yeah, you can't be the happy campers. And we're like, what? And the identity was like starting to be like kind of finalized. And there was definitely a season of like real grief. Like, what do we do? Do we throw this away? What do we? And I think we all sat for a bit. And Chris Phillips came back. They were really passionate about this idea that no, when you're up in the Rocky Mountains, it's just, there's a vibe, right? We all have this vibe up here. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And he's like, it's just, I don't know how to describe it. I was like, well, yeah, we got a vibe in San Diego. You got a vibe in Clearwater. You got a vibe in, I don't understand. And they're like, man, it's a thing. People here get it. When I say like, the vibe up here, people go, yeah, the vibe. Like, we know the vibe. And so we leaned a lot on them, and we put a lot of trust in our ignorance and their knowledge, and said, all right, let's go with it. And we had the mascot was designed by custom characters in Los Angeles that does every major theme park you've been to, they do those characters. All so right. And they just nailed it. I mean, I felt like a s'more that came out of a commercial, right? I know that like Pop-Tarts are huge, and they got that Pop-Tarts mascot. Dude, Smokey is Toasty, I should say, as I'm looking at smoke coming off his mascot.
Right.
Toasty hosts the Pop-Tart for sure.
He is widely beloved in the region. I have a hat with Toasty on it. Whenever I wear Toasty around, people comment on it. Absolutely fun brand. The story of how we've already talked on this episode about how the team was going to be the happy campers and the reasons why it switched over to the vibes. I wrote about that back in the day for sportslogos.net and spoke with Chris for that article back then. So the fact that you had all of these sort of elements in place and could switch the name from happy campers to vibes and still use all of that work that you had done, or most of that work that you had done to support it, that what a break that was, and what a great breakthrough creatively for Chris and for you all. I'm curious to know when that happens, like when you've done that much work on a project and you get that word like, oh God, this might all be for nothing. What do you do with that as a designer? How do you put that in your back pocket? And do you think, oh, maybe I'll use that character another day? Or is it just, that's just gone forever?
That's a great question. That's a really good question, because there are identities like that have been put on the shelf that kind of haunt you, and you're like, ugh, for another day.
Yeah.
Or maybe never, or maybe a theme night, or they kind of just sit there. And usually, I don't say this, usually there's some of the better identities.
Right.
And that's the frustrating part, is they're usually man, we had some really good ideas that just got like, and it doesn't have to be like a trademark attorney. It can be just the teams. It's like, man, we're not like into it.
Yeah.
Now, when they say you're not into it, okay, we're like, got it, great, not into it, move on. Like, let's go to the next thing.
Yeah.
But you also know, like, there becomes a point where you want to explain all the benefits and why this identity works.
Right.
Not even like forget your personal preference, right? Like, I like it, I don't like it. Like, we keep our personal preferences out. If they ask, I'll explain it, but I'm like, here's why this idea works so well.
Right.
And they might be like, I don't know. I'm like, well, let me try to like push you on why this idea works so well. And if they're like, yeah, we're not there, guys.
Yeah.
You got to just move on, because ultimately, like, in terms of like their excitement and it going well, the project going well, you got to just pivot and be like, all right, there's a million other creative ideas. Let's go. But those ideas that we have to shelve are always really, really good ones.
It's always the best ones. It's always the best ones. All right. My last question for you, and stop me if this is like a little too on the nose here. Colorado famously, and it's become like sort of annoying for me living here, right? Like, it famously was the first state, along with the state of Washington, to legalize marijuana.
Yeah.
And so, whenever someone hears that you're from marijuana, whenever someone hears that you're from Colorado, there's always that like, oh, Colorado, hey. And marijuana is not necessarily really a part of my life in any way. It doesn't factor into my world, but I do support the legalization and the taxation of it to support my kids' schools. So I'm all for that.
Yeah.
But the the vibes, the name vibes, the character being called Toasty, when I've had this logo on and I say that the character's name is Toasty, people are a little bit like, yeah, of course he is. Was there in your mind when you were designing this, like, a little bit of innuendo, a little bit of a wink and a nod to the association of Colorado being mile high, the legalization of marijuana? Was there that?
Not on our end.
Yeah.
I think the team named him. So that's, I just, not on our end. It wasn't like that. Listen, you can Urban Dictionary every team name.
Yes.
Like, and find a reason why it is terrible. Some of the best team names are like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
A mud hen, that's, I'm joking. I don't know. I just made that up, right? I just made that up. Right. So like, when they come back and they're like, hey, there's like a small dispensary or called the Happy Camper or whatever, I'm just like, who cares?
Yeah.
Right. Because what we're creating is so bigger and so differentiated. And, it's the same argument like, hey, the Chihuahuas, everybody's going to think Paris Hilton's Purse Dog, or they're going to think Yo Quiero Taco Bell. And I'm like, no, they're not.
Yeah.
Like, no one thinks that in El Paso now at all.
Right.
And the same in your city too. They're not going to think that over time because it's its own entity. It's its own thing. Right.
Yeah.
No one looks at the Starbucks logo and says, oh, there's a mermaid there. And that reminds me of Ariel. Right. Like, it doesn't happen. Like, they're completely separate. When I say BlackBerry, in the context of, device, people are like, that's a BlackBerry. But when I look at the fruit, no one's thinking, oh, the device, right? They just somehow they exist in separate worlds.
Yeah.
And I knew that happened, with other teams that we've done that had, references. And so when Happy Campers came along, I was like, whatever, it doesn't, I just didn't think about it. I didn't think about getting toasted or something like that.
Right.
I'm sure that like, that's, if people want to believe that and they're like, that's why I want to buy the merchandise. I'm like, cool, great.
Right.
Yes, go for it.
Yeah, please
but
do.
It wasn't like overtly decided, like, oh, here's why we're going to come up with this name.
Yeah. Well, I've said this a number of times. I love this logo. I love that they're right down the road from me. I've been to probably 10 or 12 of these games. Caught a foul ball there once, gave it to a kid, of course. My favorite logo is the one where Toasty is kind of facing the viewer, the camera, as it were, and he's throwing a baseball. He's just got a baseball in his hand. And he's throwing it up and down. That's my favorite of all these logos. Totally fun logo. Totally fun addition to the minor league baseball lexicon. So I appreciate that, and such a fun story to sort of think about, like the changes you all had to make on the fly, and this sort of like stuffy reasons for the last second change. We didn't even talk about the fact that Rocky Mountain Oysters was one of the finalists for the.
It was. It was. It was.
Very quickly, was that ever seriously considered in any real way?
Yeah, it was. It was absolutely seriously considered.
That,
And there is, I don't know, maybe one day there'll be what could have been night.
would love it so much. I would love it so much. I would absolutely get some, especially if they were serving it at the ballpark. That's the next step here, is get them.
Yes, you'll have to settle for calf fries down in Amarillo, which I think is the same thing.
Oh, is that right? I actually didn't know
Yes.
that. That's funny.
Yes.
Then this is always so much fun. Looking forward to talking to you again for another grandiose identity. I so appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy schedule. I know you guys are so busy, but it's so much fun for me to get to talk to you and have you on the podcast. So I really appreciate you, and appreciate getting to talk to you about these logos.
Pleasure's all mine.
All right. We'll talk to you next time, Jason. Thank you. Grandiose.com and
You got
at
it.
Grandiose on all the socials.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I am very pleased to welcome back to the podcast one Ranger Amy Burnett. Except Ranger Amy, well, first of all, hello, how you doing?
Hello, I'm good. How about you?
Well, I'm doing really well, talking about one of my favorite brands in minor league baseball. But you are normally our wildlife correspondent. This is not a wildlife thing. So I have two questions for you. You have lived in a variety of places in the United States. You grew up in New Hampshire.
Mhm.
You lived in New Mexico and North Carolina and California, and then you settled in Arizona for quite some time. And you recently moved to the state of Colorado. So first question out of two,
Mhm.
what is, in your mind, that Rocky Mountain vibe?
I think the Rocky Mountain vibe is a little slower.
Mm,
Take time to smell the columbine flowers, right? It's about enjoying the scenery, going up to a beautiful vista, taking a hike, and just they work hard, but they also take time to play hard. So I think the Rocky Mountain vibe is just enjoying the outdoors, because there are so many beautiful days of weather and sun in Colorado. You don't think of Colorado as a sunny state, but it really is.
we do think of Colorado as a sunny state, and we had someone who worked for our Convention and Visitors Bureau who made up a completely fabricated stat that Colorado has A, more days of sunshine than San Diego, and B, 300 days of sunshine a year. And those stats are completely meaningless, because like, what is a day of sunshine? Is it like 1 minute of sun? Is it all day is sunny? I actually know the person who did this, and he invented this stat. It is completely fabricated.
That's awesome.
Okay, so I'll ask you, first of all, does every place have its own vibe, or do you have to be like kind of a cool place to have a vibe? Is Colorado different from other places, or is any place just going to have a vibe?
So I think when you use the word vibe, it implies sort of more laid back.
Mm.
Like, I'm not sure that Boston has a vibe.
I think Boston doesn't have a vibe. It has an attitude, and it has the country's worst drivers.
Oh, absolutely. There's a reason we used to call them massholes.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, like I said, this was going to be short. I just wanted to get your take on the Rocky Mountain vibes, and as a new resident of Colorado, what your perception of that was. So, Ranger Amy Burnett, thank you very much. Next time we have you on, we'll be vibing about some animals.
I like it.
All right, everyone, welcome back. It is time for Studio Simon Stumpers with my friend Dan Simon of the prolific design firm Studio Simon. Dan, good morning. How are you doing?
I am, as usual, fantastic. Thank you for asking. How are you today?
You grimace when you ask that question. Dan, I've actually been I've been tagged with the scarlet letter of COVID, but it's a much milder thing now than the first time I had it, which was a long time ago. So we're not here to talk about that sort of thing, though. We are here to talk about let's change the vibe here on this episode, Dan. See?
I see what you did.
We are here to talk about the Rocky Mountain vibes. So I'm curious to see what your Studio Simon Stumper is going to be all about.
Well, I don't think in this case it's all that surprising or it's going to be all that surprising with a visual centerpiece that is an anthropomorphized s'more. We're going to talk s'more about s'mores.
Very good. Nicely done.
There are s'mores. There's a s'mores everything. Ben and Jerry's has a s'mores ice cream. Starbucks has a s'mores coffee. Has had. Hershey's has a s'mores candy bar. Oreos has a s'mores cookie. Believe it or not, I even found this hard to believe. There is even a cup noodles, not cup o noodles. People, I think, including myself, just assumed it's cup of noodles. It's not. It's just called cup noodles. There's a cup noodles ramen s'mores. S'mores ramen. It's like, I don't think we needed to go there, but they did. They went, and we're going now. There's adding to that list. There will now be a s'mores stumper, and here we go with it. Who is credited with the invention, for lack of a better word, of s'mores? Is it A, the Hershey Company? Is it B, the Girl Scouts? Or is it C, LL Bean?
The Hershey Company sure feels obvious because it is a way to sell chocolate bars. The Girl Scouts, there's a narrative where the Girl Scouts option works because, they're all about camping and outdoors and creating by the way, a dessert that I consider to be overrated. This is a major contention point with me and some of my friends here.
Let me interject then. I find it very interesting that you consider that overrated because not that it played a big part in this movie, but s'mores does have a scene in The Sandlot. As a matter of fact, and maybe the first time that the great Hambino utters the line, "You're killing me, Smalls," because Smalls did not know what a s'mores was. As a matter of fact, he's asked in the movie by the Hambino, "You want a s'mores?" And Smalls answers, "S'more of what?" And Hambino says, "You're killing me, Smalls." So you consider that an overrated snack or dessert, and you've already said on this podcast that you consider The Sandlot to be overrated as well. So maybe it all stems from s'mores.
It could be. Speaking of The Sandlot, I was on the field immediately next to the guy who played Squints in The Sandlot during the recent baseball palooza because my buddy Steve was throwing out the first pitch at a Scranton Wilkes-Barre Rail Riders game. And that was a day when Squints was signing autographs, and there was a Squints bobblehead that they were giving away at the Rail Riders game. And so I was right there by Squints, and I didn't approach him because there were many people there who were very happy to see him. And I figured that was going to be a lot more meaningful to them than it was to me to get a chance to interact with Squints. But I did take his picture from several feet away because he's a celebrity, and I guess that's what we do.
So you didn't go up to the actor who played Squints and just lean over and say, "Overrated"?
Thank goodness I am not the sort of person who would do that. Like if someone has created something, that other people find charming and wonderful and it's important to them, who am I to yuck their yum, right? Like get out there and enjoy that movie if you like that movie.
Well, I want to go on record as saying I love the movie The Sandlot. So please know that I'm not dissing what I consider to be an all-time great. This is from Dan's Movie Corner.
Dan's Movie Corner. The last one was LL Bean.
We kind of meandered a little bit there. So let's just remind the listeners. Your choices are the Hershey
Hershey.
Company, the Girl Scouts, and LLB.
Yeah. I'm going to go full on cynical with this one, Dan. And I'm going to say that the Hershey Company did it as a way to sell chocolate bars.
Okay. Well, would you be glad to know that your cynicism was unnecessary and there's a better story than this, or would you just like to have gotten it right?
Oh, in this moment right now, I'm hoping that I got it right. But I do, if I got it wrong, I hope it's the Girl Scouts because I like the Girl Scouts as an organization. I think that they do good work.
Well, maybe you will like them even more when you learn that they are the correct answer to today's Studio Simon Stumper. So
That is so wholesome. I love that. That is
but-
the purely wholesome response would have been the Girl Scouts. And, maybe on a different day, in a different mood, I would have gone with that one. So I'm glad. I am glad. I'm glad, Dan.
well, here's something that's not so wholesome. This is
Oh, no.
everybody beware of the internet, because when I was doing my research for this question, everything led to the story that in 1927, the first ever recipe for a s'more was published in a Girl Scout guidebook entitled Tramping and Trailing with the Girl Scouts. And it was the recipe was credited to troop leader Loretta Scott Crew. But that has since been debunked. And as a matter of fact, a page about troop leader Crew was taken down from Wikipedia because apparently that was a hoax on the internet. And from what I can determine, now, fortunately, the Girl Scouts still get the credit, because assuming this information on the internet is true, the earliest mention of s'mores appeared in a Norwalk News article entitled "Patrol Leaders Have Outing, Fall Plans Discussed, and Camp Andre Dishes Introduced." Sorry for that long headline. I didn't write it. But the article specified 2 dishes that were served at this outing, one being kebabs and the other some mores with a hyphen, which since got shortened, as I think we all know, to s'mores, with the description of the some mores, including the s'mores ingredients we all know and love: the graham cracker, the chocolate, which is often Hershey's chocolate, and the marshmallow. So the Girl Scouts, thank you. I like s'mores, just like I like the Sandlot. So Paul, I think you're an outlier here. I would say most people like the movie and the s'mores.
I think most people like the movie and the s'mores for the same reason, which is nostalgia. And as John Hodgman tells us, nostalgia is a toxic impulse. I will, I will say that there was part of me that thought perhaps the answer to this question was going to relate to the fact that my recent baseball palooza trip brought us through Pennsylvania and, in fact, right past Hershey, Pennsylvania. And so, and in fact, there was even some talk of, do we go to Hershey Park, where I rode my first ever roller coaster as a child. The Comet was the Hershey Park roller coaster before I graduated to the Super Duper Looper. But yeah, I thought there was something in the back of my head that thought Dan's doubling down on the fact that I just got back from a Pennsylvania-based baseball palooza. So, but no, Girl Scouts.
Yep, and I have been on that same roller coaster, so we share that.
Dan, as always, thank you so much for bringing a fantastic Studio Simon Stumper. I always learn something on this podcast from you, and so I appreciate that. And hey, we'll see you in 1 week. Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome. See you next week.